Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Today there are two topics. Actually, this is the continuation of the third stage. Complications of third stage. Those are like postpartum hemorrhage, then perineal tear, inversion of uterus, retained placenta. So today two small topics are given to me. One is perineal tear. I am not going in much detail of perineum, anatomy of perineum. Okay. So what is perineal tear? This is basically lacerations of perineum. And why it happened? It happened because of overstretching or rapid stretching of the tissue, especially when there is a rigid perineum in primary. Okay, that's why this perineal tear are more common in primary as compared to multigravida. Causes may be obstetrical causes and non-obstetrical causes. We will focus today on obstetrical causes. So obstetrical causes may be malpresentation like breech, then contracted pelvic outlet, prolonged labor, operative vaginal deliveries like forceps or vacuum. With vacuum, relatively less perineal trauma as compared to forceps, but it is more traumatic to fetus, for baby, like kephaliometoma, this subconjunctival hemorrhage and all these things. So in operative vaginal delivery, forceps causes more trauma. Then macrosomic babies, occipital posterior position, that diameter is increased. Okay, then precipitate labor, there is a rapid stretching of the perineum in precipitate labor. In epidural analgesia will lead to malpresentation and it can lead to perineal tear, induction of labor and rigid perineum. These are the various high risk factors for perineal tear. Now non-obstetric causes may be because of rape or molestation or history of fall, or there may be road traffic accident or bullhorn injury. This we see in like less common in clinical practice. More common is obstetric perineal tear. So when we classify this perineal tear, so according to RCOG there are 4 degrees of perineal tear. First degree when there is a injury to perineal skin or vaginal mucosa. Then second degree is when injury to perineum involving perineal muscles also. But here there is no involvement of the anal sphincter. Third degree tear is when there is an involvement of the external or internal anal sphincter. So when again we can divide third degree perineal tear into third A, third B and third C. Third A when less than 50% of external anal sphincter thickness torn. 3B when more than 50% of the external anal sphincter thickness torn. And 3C when both external anal sphincter as well as internal anal sphincter torn. 4th degree perineal tear when there is a anal epithelium or rectal mucosa is involved. Then 4th degree tear. So this perineal tear topic is important. You can get a short note on perineal tear. Then you have to write down classification, then various high risk factors, then various degrees of perineal tear, then what is the management. Inversion of uterus is relatively not that important from your point of view. So we can see first perineal tear, as you can see in the picture, perineal skin is involved or vaginal mucosa is involved. There is no involvement of the muscle or fascia. And when we talk about periurethral laceration, both sides of the urethra, there is a superficial lacerations are there. They are also included in the first degree perineal tear because only mucosa is involved, or we can say perineal skin is involved. Now second degree perineal tear, you can see the bulbocavernous muscle and superficial transverse perineal muscle. So along with vaginal mucosa or perineal skin, there is an involvement of the muscle also there, muscle and their fascia. Okay, this is the second degree perineal tear. Third, in this second degree perineal tear, you can see that anal sphincter is intact. In first degree perineal tear also anal sphincter is intact. Second degree perineal tear, anal sphincter is intact. Now we see the third degree perineal tear. Here we can see there is an involvement of the external anal sphincter. So depending on the involvement of if it is less than 50% of the EAS, then 3A. If more than 50% of EAS, then 3B. If internal sphincter is also involved, then 3C. And when there is an anal epithelium or rectal mucosa is involved, you can see in this picture, internal anal sphincter, external anal sphincter and rectal mucosa is also involved. There is a tear in the rectal mucosa. Okay, so this is the 4th degree perineal tear. Now how to recognize? Basically, whenever we deliver the patient, every time after delivery, we should do thorough examination of the perineum. And we should put a Sims speculum and we should thoroughly examine the vagina also for any perineal tear. Okay, so put the patient in extended lithotomy position. We should have proper light, adequate light should be there. Then vulva should be examined from upward to downward. We should see clitoris, then urethra, periurethral, and we should come downward towards anus. So we should see paraclitoral tear, paraurethral tear, paravaginal tear, pararectal skin and muscles in every case after delivery. It is very important because if you miss, patient will have traumatic PH. Otherwise, if it is a 3rd degree or 4th degree tear, patient will have present with a fetal incontinence. Okay. So perineal tear may be associated with high vaginal circular tear and tears in the fornices and cervix. So we should thoroughly, suppose after delivery of the after delivery of the baby, patient is bleeding. So first common cause is atonic PPH. So in spite of uterus is contracted, if there is a continuous bleeding, we always suspect perineal tear, vaginal tear. Because vaginal tear we cannot see by local examination. We have to insert the Sims speculum, we have to do per speculum examination, and in that per speculum examination, by using sponge holding forceps, we can examine the cervix and we can at the same time we can repair the cervical tear. If there is a no bleeding, then no need to repair because little amount of cervical tear may be inevitable, especially in primary. But if cervical tear is bleeding, then we have to repair. And how we will repair? Both the lips of the cervix, like torn lips, we have to, with the help of sponge holding forceps, and we should put interrupted stitches by chromic catgut. Okay. So one should suspect traumatic PPH due to perineal tear when continuous bleeding PV persisting even after delivery of the placenta, when uterus is contracted and retracted. This is very important because most common cause of PPH is atonic PPH. But in spite of uterine contraction, uterus is contracted, if there is a bleeding PV, we should always suspect perineal tear as well as cervical tear. Then perineal tear, how to repair? So basically what is episiotomy? Episiotomy we will take your separate class, but basically in episiotomy it's an induced 2nd degree tear. We cut the vaginal skin, vaginal mucosa, perineal skin as well as muscle. So it's a 2nd degree induced tear. So just like we repair the episiotomy, we repair the 1st degree and 2nd degree tear. So it should be repaired immediately after delivery of the placenta. Sometimes what happens, many times in many centers, deliveries are conducted by nurses or midwives. So they can deliver the baby, but they are not like trained in repairing. So in such cases, suppose patient refer to you after delivery and she comes to you after 6 hours of the delivery. So question will arise whether if it is bleeding, definitely we have to repair. Question will arise whether we should repair this tear or not. So up to 24 hours of delivery, we can repair this tear as a primary repair. So it should be repaired immediately after delivery of the placenta if trained personnel is available. If not possible, then within 24 hours of delivery. First step to define the limit of the laceration. Basically we can see like in perineum we can say okay, skin is involved, muscle is involved, but sometimes in the deep like vagina we miss its apex. So what we have to do, we have to limit the laceration, how deep it is, how extended it is, which include vagina as well as perineum. What is the requirement for repair the perineal tear? Proper light with good exposure. It is very important. In every labor room we have big lights. So proper, and this 1st and 2nd degree perineal tear we can repair in labor room itself. We should give good analgesia, like if for delivery of the patient we infiltrate lignocaine. If effect is there, it's well and good. If you think effect is not there, then again you can infiltrate the lignocaine. Good assistance is also required. Then chromic catgut or Vicryl, you can with the help of Vicryl you can repair the tear. And for 1st and 2nd degree perineal tear, to repair this, there is no separate consent is required. But as compared to when we compare with the 3rd and 2nd degree, now this is the, so what we have to do, I don't know your episiotomy class has covered or not. So what we have to do, first we have to repair the vaginal mucosa. And we can repair with the Vicryl or chromic catgut, and we can take continuous stitch. After repairing the vaginal mucosa, we should repair the muscle. Now depending on how deep muscle is involved, we can repair it in muscle itself in 2 layers or in 1 layer. If it's a small tear, only superficial muscle is involved, we can repair it 1 layer. Sometimes because of forceps, the tear may be very deep. Even ischiorectal fossa, it can extend up to the ischiorectal fossa. Then we have to take muscles in 2 layers. So first we'll repair the mucosa with the continuous suture. In some books it is written interrupted sutures also. But for all practical purpose, we repair the vaginal mucosa with the continuous suture, either Vicryl or chromic. Then muscle, we always repair muscle with the interrupted suture. Okay, so all tear there are bleeding should be identified and ligated separately. The stitching start from the apex of the vaginal mucosa. So, because if we miss the apex, then that apex will start bleeding, and there may be hematoma. Patient will present with the severe pain or in shock or tachycardia or pallor or sweating. So we should not, while repairing the episiotomy or repair of perineal tear, we should not miss the apex. Sometimes with forceps delivery, there may be deep, it is extended to the fornices. Then we, with the help of Sims speculum, with the help of assistant, with the help of good light, and if you think tear is very big, then we can shift the patient to OT also. But usually first and second degree perineal tear we can repair in the labor room itself. Okay, the muscles are stitched using the same stitch, taking full thickness of the muscles and achieving hemostasis. And it is very important, if any bleeder is there, we can tie that bleeder separately. And after that, in the last week, repair the skin with the interrupted sutures. So first vaginal mucosa, then muscle, then skin. So vaginal mucosa continuous, then muscle interrupted, then again skin is interrupted. In skin we put that. Now third and fourth degree repair. So this, in third and fourth degree repair, there is involvement of the external anal sphincter, internal anal sphincter or rectal mucosa. Repair of these tear is very important, because if we don't repair it properly, patient will present with the flatus incontinence, fecal incontinence, or there may be rectovaginal fistula. It got repaired posteriorly, but there may be towards its apex, there may be some area has left, and there may be rectovaginal fistula. So third and fourth degree perineal tear, prerequisites are there should be written consent. As compared to first and second degree perineal tear, here we have to take separate consent, and we should mention that although we are repairing, we are trying our best, but then there are chances of fecal and flatus incontinence, and there are rectovaginal fistula, because healing will depend on many factors. One factor is how you are repairing, then how patient body will respond, presence of any hematoma, presence of infection. So proper written consent should be there. Then we should always do this type of repair inside the OT and under anesthesia. Okay, general anesthesia, spinal anesthesia, epidural anesthesia or subtle anesthesia. And always a trained person, trained obstetrician, maybe senior resident, should repair this third degree and fourth degree perineal tear. Why it is important? Because anal sphincter is involved. If it is not repaired properly, then patient will have incontinence. Recently, one patient got referred from Ganesh Das Hospital. She delivered on 1st of October and she delivered by forceps delivery. And she had fourth degree perineal tear, rectal mucosa was involved. She was there for 6-7 days and she developed sepsis. They referred here with this distress, respiratory distress. So we performed COVID also. That patient was COVID positive. We performed RT-PCR, CPNAT for that patient. She was COVID positive also. But she was in sepsis, and finally after 48 hours in the hospital, she died. So she was only 18 years. So you can imagine, if this repair these tears are not repaired timely, it can lead to sepsis also, and patient will lose her life. So if you are not trained, you can refer the patient, because at the same time, if it is not bleeding, she is not going to die. Okay, but after proper hemostasis, after proper approximation, we can repair, and at least patient, she will not have sepsis. So we can repair up to 24 hours. That's why I told it should not be. Suppose patient referred after 10 hours she reached, and we should not repair it. Up to 24 hours we can repair the tear. This is take home message. Okay, good light, good assistance, and proper instruments and sutures should be there. So usually we prefer to repair such type of tear by vicryl or PDS, like first degree and second degree tear we can repair by chromic catgut. Okay, nowadays that vicryl rapide is coming, but here we should use always vicryl or PDS. Now repair immediately, I told you, within 24 hours. If 24 hours has passed, then we should repair after 6 weeks. That is important. But within 24 hours, we should always repair. Okay. Now approximation should be good, and there should be no dead space. Otherwise, bleeding will collect there, and patient will present with the hematoma. And blood is a very good source of blood is a very good culture media, so it will lead to infection. So then the patient will present with the gapping. When healing is not proper, again she will have fecal incontinence, and it will lead to sepsis. So equipments for repair, you already attended labor posting. So we know this surgical drapes and gloves, needle holders, scissors, forceps, Ellis forceps, syringes, lignocaine. If we are giving in 3rd degree and 4th degree perineal tear, if we are giving anesthesia, then there is no need for lignocaine. Then Vicryl and PDS. So basically vaginal mucosa, rectal mucosa should be repaired with Vicryl, but external anal sphincter and internal anal sphincter should be repaired with PDS. PDS having good tensile strength. Then surgical strategy, identification of the additional birth injury. Basically this tear happens with instrumental delivery. So it is not only one tear is there. Right side there may be episiotomy extension is there, and left side there may be tear, there may be cervical tear is there. So we have to see all the proper thorough examination we should do, and then first we should repair the cervical tear, and then tear which are like proximally. So from proximal to distally we should come towards anus. Okay, so identification of additional birth injuries and exact classification of the perineal tear by means of speculum inspection and digital rectal exam. We have to do PR also. If necessary, first management of the cervical and high vaginal tear, I told you we should go to proximal, because once we repair this tear, then perineum, this vaginal introitus will be small, then we cannot go inside. So first we should repair the high vaginal tear, proximal tears from top to down, and then management of the perineal tear is done. For 4th degree perineal tear, repair anorectal epithelium with the continuous suture, and when once we repair the anorectal epithelium, this knot should go towards the rectum. This is very important. Okay. If the edges of the torn internal anal sphincter, now there are two methods to repair. First we will repair in 4th degree perineal tear. First we have to start like in 1st and 2nd degree perineal tear, we started with the vaginal mucosa, then muscle, and then skin. Now and in skin we have to give metra suture. Now with 4th degree perineal tear we have to start with the rectum. So we have to repair the rectum with Vicryl 30, and knot should be inside towards the rectum. After that we repair the internal sphincter, and after that we repair the external sphincter, then muscle, then vaginal mucosa, and then skin. So you can see how extensive this repair will be. So now they are telling if this is the you can see this is the external anal sphincter. So that is torn. So they are telling there are two techniques. One is end-to-end technique, so we just approximate both the ends, and one is overlapping technique. By you can see by in the picture. So they are telling, some studies they are telling if external anal sphincter involvement is less than 50%, then we should do repair to end-to-end technique. If it is involvement is more than 50%, then we should repair the overlapping technique. But various studies are there is no difference in the outcome, and basically it is depending it is the practice of the surgeon. If he is following end-to-end technique, he can repair with this. So either of them will be equally good. Okay. So this is a picture in which in first picture this rectal mucosa they are repairing, and video I am not having, otherwise I could see. This black and white picture you can see repair of rectal mucosa, then anal sphincter, then internal anal sphincter, then external anal sphincter. Okay. And when we repair, because in internal anal sphincter and external anal sphincter repair we have to do interrupted suture. So knot should be buried inside the, after that we have to repair the muscle, so that knot should be buried inside the muscular layer. Okay, and after that again just like 2nd degree perineal tear, once you repair the rectal mucosa, then internal anal sphincter, then external anal sphincter, after that it will become just like a 2nd degree perineal tear. So now muscle and vaginal mucosa and then skin. This is all pictures. So choice of suture material, I told you in 1st and 2nd degree perineal tear you can use Vicryl or chromic catgut. But for 3rd degree perineal tear, repair of perineal 3rd and 4th degree, we have to repair by Vicryl or PDS, and especially sphincter part we have to repair by PDS, and muscle and vaginal mucosa and rectal mucosa we should repair by Vicryl. Vicryl we should use 30. Needle should be small because the rectal mucosa is very thin, delicate, fragile, so we should repair by 30. Okay. Post-operative management is very important, because once a repair is good, but if patient is strained at stool, then there will be dehiscence. So what we have to do in such type of repair, we will keep for 24 to 48 hours NBM. There should be no passage of stool from that area, otherwise it will be contaminated. We have to give broad spectrum antibiotic because that area is soiled with the stool. So we have to control the infection or to prevent the infection, we have to give broad spectrum antibiotic, then we have to keep patient NBM for 48 hours, and after that we have to give post-operative laxatives. So there may be smooth passage of the stool, there should be no strain. If hard stool, patient will pass hard stool, then there will be strain at the stitches, and stitches will give way and patient will present with the dehiscence. Then she should use SIDS bath. The analgesia should be good because patient will have pain and she will be unable to pass urine also. So for 24 hours we can catheterize also patient, and bulky agent should not be given with laxatives, and physiotherapy and pelvic floor exercise after 6 to 12 weeks after repair, because there will be fibrosis. Okay. So it is very important. Now follow up. So basically what I told you at the time of consent, when we take for repair, we always take the consent for, because if repair is not proper, or if healing is not proper, if infection is there, if hematoma is there, in that condition there may be patient may present with the anal incontinence. So in follow up we have to ask the patient whether she is having this anal incontinence or not. We should inspect the perineum, we should do vaginal and rectal palpation, okay, and we should discuss 1, 3, 3rd and 4th degree perineal tear. We should advise patient to do elective cesarean in her next pregnancy, and she should avoid pregnancy for some time, like 1 year. And if you on follow up you find a patient is having incontinence pain, then we have to refer gynecologist, special gynecologist or colorectal surgeon. And in such cases there are investigation, anorectal manometry or ultrasonography, we can endo-anal ultrasound. Recommendation for subsequent delivery, I told you already, should be counseled about the risk of developing anal incontinence or worsening symptoms with subsequent vaginal delivery. Okay, so in such cases, few tells if patient is not having incontinence after repair, then she should go for vaginal delivery, but we should not allow after 3rd degree and 4th degree perineal tear. But otherwise patient will have an incontinence in her next pregnancy. Okay, so elective cesarean delivery should be offered to all women who have previously suffered from 3rd degree and 4th degree perineal tear, and especially to those patients with persisting fecal incontinence, reduced sphincter function, or suspected fetal macrosomia. And these are the long-term complications of obstetrical perineal laceration. She may have chronic perineal pain. Why? Because there may be fibrosis. So she may have dyspareunia and urinary and fetal incontinence. So these are the long-term effect of, so these are the long-term complications of perineal tears. Prevention, liberal use of episiotomy. Regarding this, there are studies say that associated episiotomy will lead to further tear. But definitely there may be proper conduct of labor during 2nd stage, because we should maintain the flexion by using our left hand, and right hand by giving the perineal support. This is very important to maintain flexion while delivering of the baby. So smallest diameter will pass through perineum. It will not allow the rapid stretching or excessive stretching of the perineum. So perineal support, and to maintain the flexion, we have to use our left hand just to maintain the flexion, and right hand to give the support of the perineum. Okay. So conclusion is more common in primigravida, that I told you, because of rigid perineum. Then gross injuries due to mismanaged 2nd stage of labor. That's why I told obstetric perineal tear is more common. Then after vaginal birth, always do examination to see for 3rd and 4th degree perineal tear, because when we repair now, results will be good. Okay, otherwise for 6 weeks patient has to tolerate that incontinence, because we can repair within 24 hours. And if she is in any gynecologist is delivering her, she can repair. We can repair immediately. Perineal tear should be repaired immediately after delivery of the placenta, and clinician should be aware about this. So this I covered perineal tear. You can get a short note in the exam, okay, for perineal tear. So all these points you have to mention. Don't go in surgical details, but basically episiotomy you should know by heart. And just like episiotomy, we should repair the 1st and 2nd degree perineal tear. Your second topic for today is inversion of uterus. So basically what is inversion? It is extremely, again, 3rd stage complication and extremely rare, but it is life threatening. Okay. And what happens in this inversion of uterus? Uterus is turned inside out partially or completely. You can see this picture. Uterus came out. It's inside out. So you can see this, whatever surface you can see, this is the decidual surface. It's not prolapse. Okay. It's inversion of uterus. So uterus turns inside out. So again, variety. So basically what happens? In 1st degree, there is a dimpling of the fundus, which still remains above the level of internal os. Although uterus is coming down, it's not prolapse, because now inside part is coming outside. Okay, but it is remains just above the level of internal os. Second degree, it passes through cervix but lies inside the vagina. In third degree, so you can see there's a dimpling of the fundus, this dimpling. But its dimpling is still at the level, above the level of internal os. This is the internal os. Okay, so it is still above the level of internal os. Now in second degree, dimpling is like it is progressive and it crosses the internal os. But it is still in the vagina. In your books, they mention 4 types, like first degree, okay, dimpling but above the internal os. Then second degree crosses the internal os, second degree crosses the internal os but not reaching up to the introitus. And in third degree reaching up to the introitus, and fourth degree it's coming outside. We can see in external, when we are standing the patient, we can see uterus is coming out. Just I show that picture now that it is 4th degree perineal tear. So few people say it's 3rd degree but it's 4th degree. So whatever, if you will write first degree, second degree, third degree, otherwise you can mention for all 4 degree also. So in third degree, sometimes endometrium with or without the attached placenta is visible outside the vulva. You can see this purplish structure. This is a placenta still attached, and cervix and part of the vagina is also involved in the process. So cervix will also come outside along with uterus. We are not going to ask you inversion in the exam from MBBS point of view. Inversion is not that important, but yeah, perineal tear is important. It may be spontaneous or induced. Now spontaneous how? Suppose uterus is relaxed and patient is having violent cough. So uterus will go down, inside out. Okay, so coughing, sneezing or bearing down efforts are caused by localized atony at the placental side over the fundus, or may be associated with fundal attachment of the placenta, short cord or placenta accreta. You know what is placenta accreta and placenta accreta? This placenta is densely or morbidly adherent to the decidua. It is accreta. When advanced degree, when it is morbidly adherent to the myometrium, it is increta. When it is it crosses the, like it goes to the serosa, then is the percreta. So in any morbidly adherent placenta, we try to deliver the placenta, but placenta will not come out, and what will happen along with placenta is this uterus will come inside out. So morbidly adherent placenta is one of the risk factor for inversion of uterus. Now iatrogenic, most of the time it happens like in iatrogenic due to mismanagement of the third stage. So you know what is how we manage third stage. We do active management of the third stage. In active management of the third stage, immediately after delivery of the baby, we should give 10 units syntocinon intramuscularly. Okay. Then after that, we should use our left hand and we should push the fundus, push the uterus towards the like patient head. Okay, with our one hand, left hand, and with our right hand, we will give traction, constant traction on the cord. Okay, this is known as controlled cord traction. We are giving traction on the cord, but we are pushing the uterus above. We are okay. But when there is somebody is like, they are not doing controlled cord traction, they are just pulling the cord. They are giving traction on the cord. Then uterus will come inside out. Occurs when attempts to deliver the placenta by cord traction with the uterus relaxed and fundal pressure while the uterus is relaxed. So we should avoid fundal pressure. This is an old method of delivering a placenta, Credes method, in which we should give fundal pressure. But now this method is not recommended because it will lead to uterine inversion. Now we deliver the placenta by controlled cord traction. So when there is a mismanagement of the third stage of labor, patient will present with the inversion of uterus. And this is it's a life-threatening condition. How that we'll see. Risk factor: prolonged labor, fetal macrosomia, uterine malformation, short umbilical cord, manual removal of the placenta, collagen vascular disease when in her tissue there is no strength, then uterine over-enlargement. These are the various risk factors. Now what will happen? Initially, previous years it was thought patient will present with shock. So previously it was thought that this shock is neurogenic in origin. Ki basically when uterus will come inside out, there will be pulling on the infundibulopelvic ligament, on ovaries, on round ligament. So there will be peritoneal irritation. So there will be vasovagal shock, neurogenic origin. But nowadays it has seen, because of the inversion of the uterus, patient will bleed a lot also. So this shock is having hemorrhagic loss is also there. Okay. So it's not only neurogenic. So basically in inversion of the uterus there is a like underestimation of the blood loss. So whenever there is a inversion of the uterus is present, always think blood loss is there, blood loss will be there, you have to arrange the blood. Okay. So hemorrhagic shock, just like you manage hemorrhagic shock in obstetric or in any other branch, in PPH, in APH or in ectopic pregnancy, which patient present with the shock, we have to introduce like 18 gauze cannula, then we start the fluid. Okay, meanwhile blood will arrange, and then when blood comes, that. So it's not only neurogenic shock is there, hemorrhagic shock is also there. So we have to manage that also. And simultaneously we have to reposit the uterus. So there will be less stretching on the nerves, and this neurogenic origin of the shock will be rectified. Okay. So hemorrhage, especially after detachment of the placenta, yeah, it can lead to, so danger may be the patient may present with the shock, then patient may present with the hemorrhage, and there may be pulmonary embolism. And if you don't treat, suppose patient survives somehow, so it will lead to infection, uterine sloughing, and chronic, it will be like chronic inversion will be there if patient survives. Otherwise, it's a life-threatening condition. Now diagnosis. So how patient will present? Patient will say severe pain in the lower abdomen, and she will say like I am having, although baby has delivered, but she will still having bearing down pain sensation. Okay, signs, varying degree of shock is a constant feature. So just like in perineal tear we discuss, if uterus is contracted and patient is having bleeding P, we always suspect perineal tear, cervical tear. So just like here, after delivery of the baby, if there is no cause and patient is going into shock, okay, bleeding will be there. Then always think about inversion of the uterus. Basically, complete inversion, you can see some globular bogey mass outside the perineum, okay, at the level of introitus. But when in first degree and second degree inversion of the uterus, you will not see mass outside. So what we have to do? We have to do PV or PS examination to see that mass in the vagina. Okay. So varying degree of shock is constant feature. In abdominal examination we find that there is a cupping or dimpling of the fundal surface. If time permits, we can do sonography, but usually time doesn't permit. We have to do clinical diagnosis of this situation. Yeah, in chronic inversion, we can see, because in chronic inversion, these patients present with gynae. Okay, chronic inversion is there and they will present with the bleeding, dirty discharge, smell. But here we have to make our diagnosis by clinical examination. So this is the prognosis is extremely gloomy. Even the patient survives infection, sloughing of the uterus, and chronic inversion with ill health may occur. Prevention. So basically what we told, it's a iatrogenic many a times. So what we have to do? When uterus is relaxed, we should not try to deliver the placenta, and we should deliver the placenta by control contraction. We should not give the fundal pressure. Okay, we should do control contraction, means we with our one hand, with left hand, we should push the uterus towards the patient like up, and while our right hand we should give a control contraction. So we have to take care of these things. These are very important. So because of mismanaged third stage of labor, inversion can occur. Because of mismanaged second stage of the labor, perineal tear occurs. That's why labor is very important to manage the labor. Management. So now we know, suppose patient doesn't present the shock and you diagnose. So basically we have to immediately reposit that, because otherwise as time passes she will eventually have shock. Okay. So in that condition we immediately reposit. And now what is the principle? The parts which come first. So in this inversion, fundus will come first. So the part which come first, we should deposit that part last. This is the fundus. This is the fundus. So this part will in the last. So we put our hand, and in this globular mass we should keep in our palm, and with the tip of our fingers we should put this lateral part up. This part should go up. And the last, this part should go. And once you reposit, your hand should be there. The moment you will remove your hand, it will come out again. So once you reposit, your hand should be there, and then you start oxytocin. Once uterus is contracted, then after that you can remove your hand. Okay. To replace that part first, which is inverted last, with the placenta attached to the uterus by steady firm pressure exerted by the fingers, to apply counter support by the other hand placed on the abdomen, and after replacement the hand should remain inside the uterus until the uterus become contracted by oxytocin. Now it is recommended. Now you can imagine, if placenta is present here, if here placenta is removed, okay, suppose this placenta is present and placenta is so big, 100 grams of placenta is there. They say don't remove the placenta, but you can imagine along with placenta how we will reposit this uterus. So basically we should wait patient to be shifted to OT, and we should tell the anesthetist that give some uterine relaxant and remove the placenta. It will be helpful in repositing. Otherwise, along with placenta, it's very easy to say don't remove the placenta, but it is important, don't remove the placenta in the labor room itself, otherwise she will bleed like anything. So what you have to do, if placenta is removed, okay, you can reposit. And in such cases, if it can be reposited easily, you just reposit in labor room itself. But if placenta is not removed, then don't remove the placenta in labor room. She will bleed like anything. Shift the patient to the OT. Anesthetist will give anesthesia. He will give some uterine relaxant like Halothane and remove the placenta. Although at that time she will have bleeding, but we have to do fast. And then keep this mass on the palm of your uterus, and then with the help of the finger you reposit these lateral walls, and at the end you just reposit this fundus. If it is, and it happens when it happens immediately you can reposit it. But once it will be prolonged like 2 hours, 3 hours have passed, then there may be hampering in venous return and patient will present edema, and it will be very difficult to reposit, because you can imagine after delivery of the placenta, uterine size will be 26 weeks. Then again 24 to 26 weeks ka size we have to push this uterus through vagina, through cervix, and again we have to reposit it in the uterus, in the abdomen. Now, if placenta is to be removed manually only after the uterus become contracted. If placenta is already partially removed, then we can remove the placenta. But usual treatment of shock including blood transfusion should be arranged simultaneously. So if patient is in shock, then we should simultaneously treat the shock and then we should try to reposit it. Because this is the cause of shock. Once you will not, and neurogenic factor is there. Until and unless you will not remove traction on the infundibulopelvic pelvic ligament, on the ovaries, on the round ligament, patient will be present with neurogenic shock. And hemorrhagic shock you should manage with blood transfusion and fluid. Okay, so this is the picture you can see. Inside part come out. This is the, you can see decidua. This is not the prolapse, okay, and this is the cervix. So we hold the uterus in our palm with the help of our finger. We should push this part, lateral part up. Then after repositing it, we should keep our hands inside the uterine cavity, otherwise it will come out again. So this in second picture you can see this is the fundus, and we are repositing at the end, in the last. First we reposit this lateral part with the help of our finger. So the treatment of shock should be instituted with an urgent normal saline drip and blood transfusion. That part you know already, how to manage the shock part, to push the uterus inside the vagina. Yeah, sometimes like what I told you, because of edema and all, it's very difficult to reposit. So what we have to do, at least push the uterus inside the vagina, so there will be less traction. Then we can shift the patient to OT, and after that we can properly reposit. Okay, and pack the vagina with antiseptic floral gauze. Foot end of the bed is raised. So many times if it immediate reposition, if we try, it can be done. But sometimes what happens, if you do after some time, then it will be very difficult. And it happens in this we can do in the second degree. Like if uterus is inside vagina, then by hydrostatic method, what we do in hydrostatic method, we put one nozzle and we start this normal saline with the help of this nozzle. You can see we can insert one of this thing inside the vagina, and we close the vagina with the help of closing the labia. Only this portion will go inside, and with the help of this we infuse 5 liters of saline, and with this hydrostatic pressure this uterus will go up. Okay, so 5 liters of warm saline fluid is run into the posterior fornix using a douche nozzle. If douche nozzle is not there and vaginal orifice is blocked by operator's palm supplemented by labial apposition around the palm by an assistant. Suppose we are not having this nozzle, then what we can do, we use this in the labor room. Now ventouse, you must saw this. So we can put the ventouse inside the vagina and we conduct the drip, and with this, and it will act like it will close the perineum also. There will be no leakage. So, but this we can do in the second degree, like uterus is inverted, came out inverted, but it is still in the vagina. So hydrostatic method we can do in second degree. Subacute stage, sometimes what happen with these two methods, we cannot reposit In that condition, there are like various surgeries are mentioned, vaginal method, abdominal method. But even if you know one method like abdominal operation, Halton's surgery, that will be enough. We are not going in much detail. So in this what we do, now when we open the abdomen, we see like this. Everything is going inside. So this is the fallopian tube, this is the ovary, and this is the infundibulopelvic pelvic ligament. So there is a traction on this infundibulopelvic pelvic ligament. Okay, we can see this picture. So what we have to do, this is the posterior ring of the cervix. We cut this posterior ring, and from perineum we push the cervix, and this uterus will come out. So this is the Halton's operation. We make an incision in the lower uterine segment to bisect the inversion ring. This is the posterior ring. So Halton's operation, like when we cut posterior ring, Robinson's operation, we cut anterior ring. When we cut anterior ring vaginally, then this is the Spinelli's operation. When we cut posterior ring vaginally, then the Kushner's operation. But this Halton's is like we use in clinical practice. Okay. Post-operative care, once we repose it, we should continue oxytocin. Okay, otherwise again it will be relaxed and it will come out. And suppose it will not contracted and detected with oxytocin, then we can try other oxytocins like ergometrin or prostaglandin. And again, so there is so much handling, blood loss, the patient may have infection, so we have to give IV antibiotic to this patient. Okay, thank you.